All right, Fiore.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
I sure can.
Awesome. Good.
Cool. Wow, what a beautiful place this is. This is great.
Yeah, no, this is one of my favorite pod stations. So thank you so much for coming to do this. This is really cool that you're here.
Welcome. This is like what's the comedians in a car thing or something? This is what you're making me think of.
So, okay, good. I was going to ask you if you had ever done one of these before. Have you ever ridden a pod before?
I have not.
Okay, so these right here, these pods, they're actually kind of controversial. Everywhere on the mainland, they have these pods, and they travel the public roads. And so some people like them, some people don't. I like them, so I come and we're gonna like ride one today.
Wow. Classic.
Yeah, so you pick. You get to pick which one you want to do. So where do you want to go while we talk?
Okay, let's take a look here. So we've got the Atoll Coast,
Yeah.
Heterocera. So let's see. So what are the routes like? You've been on all these, right? What is Route 4? It just looks like I get dumped in the water. I feel like I need a boat on the back of a truck for that one. Let's
Well,
see here.
so the pods
Great
actually
Wall.
they change as you go over different terrains. So,
Mhm.
yeah, all of them are really cool. So it's really up
Walls
to you
around
what
the
you want to do.
atoll. Next departure. Wow.
Yeah, so I mean they're all good. So the coast is nice. The Great Wall is pretty neat too.
Let's do the Great Wall.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay. Do I click on it? Okay.
I think and maybe it'll say like Res Pod.
Let's see here. Pod monitor. See. Oh, here we go. Res pod. There we go. Okay.
And then you just sit on it.
And then we get in it.
Yep. Perfect.
Nice. It even fits my large avatar.
Yep. And then, okay, so if you look at your local screen, you don't have to do this
Oh,
while we're talking. The pod talks to you and tells you
okay.
the history of Second Life, like as we go along.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you get bored and just want to learn about
Sweet.
Second Life, in case you didn't know, you could come here and
Okay.
learn.
Okay. Okay. This is so cool. I've been so fascinated by the idea of, when I started Second Life, this idea of wandering in public places like this, the concept of the mainland being this huge contiguous space was all we imagined. I didn't ever imagine we'd have private islands. It wasn't a thing. The original design was that it was all one connected simulation.
The mainland is like it's my favorite. I love everything about it. I love the chaos.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think it's so neat. It's like if everybody's brains came together in a place, this is what it would look like.
The wonderful, or the sum of all our dreams.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to say that what Second Life would look like would be the sort of statistical average of all our dreams.
I
I
love
love these old trees. I wrote the branching structure of the trees. It was one of the first things that Andrew and I, being physics guys, did together. And I wrote these trees that were the old trees, the original trees. I wrote them. I wrote the way the branches work, which is a mathematical thing called an L system.
That's really cool. This cypress tree, this one here, this is one of my favorite trees to use in Second Life. I use it in every landscaping build I do. It makes
Oh,
a
no
great bush.
kidding.
Yeah, it makes a great bush. You can like shove it in the ground and
Yeah, maybe we should put a few thousand more system trees in. That'd be really fun, wouldn't it?
I like the system tree. Well, not all of them. I'm not a big fan of every single one, but I do like a lot of them. Is it weird for you, like coming out and seeing it alive? Um, what is that? What does it feel like to kind of? I mean, people call you the father of Second Life. So,
Mm.
how does that make you feel?
I've never really attached too much to the like father idea because it feels paternal or actively malevolent or something,
Right, right, right.
like I'm the father in a wrathful God sort of way. And I think people sometimes read words like that way. But I mean, it's incredibly awesome to look at all the wonder and complexity that people have made because that was what I wanted. I mean, more than anything, I can, to the best that I can remember, the delight for me was the question of what people would build, like in a vaguely physical, three-dimensional environment without a lot of rules. Now, I mean, admittedly, I guess you could push back and say, hey, Philip, you did make rolling hills and water and the sun and the moon, which is true. We built that in from the very beginning. So I guess we kind of put our hand on the scale a little bit in terms of what people later did. But what I was fascinated by was just what is it going to look like if you give people a bunch of building tools and you let them build together? That was really important, like up against each other, like we're talking about on the mainland. Like, what will that come to look like? If your neighbor's house looks like this, and then you design your house, and then the next person that comes along does something else, where is that going to go to? So that was the thing that I was always really interested in. And and I continue to be just like super pleased, right? Because every time I go in Second Life, if somebody invites me somewhere, often, or, almost every time, I see something spectacularly unusual that I hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
Like this trip, I was on another trip in Morgantown in the mainland, which I think is on the north edge of this continent, right? Or something like that. And it was just unbelievable. I hadn't seen that all these people had built like this huge, 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 connected set of neighborhoods that you could drive around in. And I was just delighted by it. Coming back after all these years away, this idea of larger coordinated structures is one of the things that I'm really delighted by. The other one is, of course, the immense both, and of course, there's pros and cons to this, but the immense progress with avatars, that the the farthest you can go, if you will, with an avatar is now so much farther than,
Yeah.
2005 or 6.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've heard you talk about that in interviews and stuff about how just how complex each avatar can be and how hard just like crossing a region can be with that level of complexity.
Yeah, and we gotta fix that. Hopefully, it won't happen to us while we're driving along in this little pod.
We've done a lot of region crossings now. Like
Mhm.
it does great. She says, if I remember correctly, I think it's a physical object that gets pushed across the region. So
Mm.
she's a cool chick. I'll introduce you sometime.
You should. I'd be interested as to why this pod works so well. That'd be great help for us because we do have a bunch of us thinking, or not a bunch of us, but a couple of us thinking hard about this region crossing vehicle, multiple people in the vehicle problem. I'd like to see that get
Yep.
fixed quickly here. So
Cool. Yeah.
we shall see.
I bet she'll reach out for sure. Okay, so you started as the CEO, but you're the CTO now, right? So
Yeah.
what are like the big differences between those positions?
Hmm. Well, CTO is probably a little bit of a better fit for me day to day because I am at heart an inventor and an engineer. And so when I see Second Life, I can't help but, think things like, how do I fix that? What code could we write? Or, I mean, I do think a lot about community guidelines and social contracts and stuff too. I'm kind of an engineer and a, community and behavioral engineer as well. But first and foremost, I'm originally a software engineer. So it's been fun to come back and help Brad and the team. And every day when I'm here, just work solely on product. Like that's kind of fun.
That does sound nice for sure. Like without all of the other stuff that comes along with
Yeah.
second lifing for sure.
With Second Lifing, I like that.
Second
That
lifing.
could be a good. I like that. It's a good word for working at Second Life. Second Lifing. I've always thought it was important, by the way, that we named the company so that we could give ourselves a name so that we could be the Lindens, right? Now, I must admit, I didn't think of that at the outset. Linden Lab was just because we were in this alley, Linden Alley. And so I was like, well, let's call it Linden Lab. And it was Andrew and I that were there at that time. And, it just made sense. And I was like, yeah, feels great. I think we looked up, as a funny aside, there used to be a Linden Lab like in New Jersey or something that was also like it was something weird, like a government
I
research
remember
or
that. I've actually heard of
yeah,
that
and
before.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you looked it up, and the
Yeah.
funny thing was they had some, chemical waste. It was like they had gotten in trouble for doing something bad, and I remember having to struggle with that, be like, "Well, are we gonna be well enough differentiated that people are gonna think we're this, like, New Jersey toxic chemical lab or something, or are they gonna get that we're reasonable people trying to build some software?"
I
Alright, so but
remember.
we went with it anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just so amazing. Beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful. The shadows, the trees, trying to do that NPR thing. Greta Thunberg there on the right with the world burning. Fantastic. Oh my gosh, this is so good. So good.
Okay, so when you came back, you did a little video series where you worked on like doing avatars. So
Mhm.
what was that like?
Well, I'm still gonna keep going, but I mean, what I did was what I figured would be easier than what I thought was I thought, well, after all these years coming back, I'm going to build a new avatar that is a modern avatar, but looks like Philip Linden, still makes me happy, connects me to my past and everything. And as yet, I've totally failed to do that. Although I did spend, yeah, you're right. I did a couple of sessions with people helping me. I think we did an animation overrider first, which of course was pretty easy to put on. And then the next time we got, I think, a legacy body and a Lelutka head and started putting it on me. And just, I was learning about, the various skin layers and all of that stuff. And we got partway on it and I've got it still in my inventory. And I think I'm going to get a friend at work to help me a little more, do a bit more of a custom job with it, but starting with modern skins and stuff, and then make something that looks like recognizably like Philip Linden, but respects that it's a good looking avatar, I guess, as everybody would say nowadays. So that's my direction right now. We'll see. Give it another couple weeks. I think I'll make some progress.
Well, yeah. Do you think? Well, I mean, I understand the respecting, what you've got kind of built for your avatar. Like, do you think your avatar reflects anything there is about you, or maybe even just like how you want to be online?
I think my avatar respected. It's just something I think about lots, obviously, because I made Philip Linden over a period of a few hours one day in, I think, 2002. If for those who don't remember, we had a contest amongst the employees because at that time, I don't think Stellar Sunshine or any of the other very few first people had been let in yet. But we had avatar attachments working. I think that's what it was. We had gotten to where we could make prim objects and actually attach them to a smaller set of attachment points. And so we decided for fun, there was I think 10 of us by then. So we decided we'd work all day on an avatar for each of us. And then we'd all vote and we'd give a prize that was like a dinner out to whoever made the best avatar, right? And I knew that I was not going to win because I'm not that artistic and I wasn't comfortable with Photoshop yet, and stuff. So I was like, yeah, I'm not going to win this contest. It was in fact Andrew or Leviathan Linden who won. He built this ferocious kind of Viking warrior kind of character, and it was just so beautiful. We were all like, that's amazing. But I knew I wasn't going to make it, so I just figured I'd do something kind of funny. And somebody had a pair of leather pants, and I was like, well, I'm going to go into Photoshop and I'm going to I'm going to delete, the crotch and the butt of these pants so that they become like assless chaps. And I think being in San Francisco, I was like, well, I'm just going to create, a little bit of a San Francisco, you know, Folsom Street cowboy sort of character, and I I just leaned into that, and I also tried to make Philip Linden not look like me. I didn't wanna be a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, rather, I guess, boy next door or something looking person, which, especially at that time in real life, I that's what I looked like. And so I kinda went in a different direction. The spiky hair I've always liked, but I was like, "Okay, I'm definitely gonna have really spiky hair." And then the Rocky Horror shirt and the, tattoo and the I didn't have any tattoos at that time. These were all things that I think were a little bit aspirational looking back. Like, I think what I didn't respect at the time or that I can look back on more now is that it's kind of a version of me that I like, like I wanna be a sort of a, uh, maybe a little bit of a biker, maybe a little bit scarier, maybe a little bit more just wild. And I didn't really, I think in real life, feel like I could be that person. And, like so many of us so many stories have been told like this in Second Life, not just mine, but, it's awesome. You become that avatar a little bit in a good way in real life. And of course, that's what they call the Proteus Effect, right? As named by Jeremy Balanson and Nick Yee at Stanford, that when you make an avatar, you use the avatar to explore aspects of your identity that you want to explore, and then you reflect those changes in many cases back onto yourself. And I think that was a little bit for me too.
Yeah, I think that's pretty true too. Fiore is much more dainty and beauty queenish. I'm definitely not like that. I'm more of a tomboy in real life. So I get that. Okay, are you familiar with Richard Bartle's taxonomy of player types? I'm sure you
Yeah,
have.
I am. I don't have him off the top of my head, but I have met Richard and he's wonderful. Yeah.
You've met him. Oh, that's really cool.
Sure.
Well, you learn about him like in game theory classes and stuff.
Mhm.
Like the general premise is that there's four player types. There's explorers, people that like to explore, social people that like to interact socially. There's achievers, people that like to achieve things as they, do their thing. And then there's, of course, killers, people that have, griefers, like they have fun
Yeah.
doing their griefer thing. So if you had to categorize yourself as like one of them, what would you? I don't
I
know.
like it. It's like the love languages, right?
Yeah.
What's your first and second? So I'd say my first is explorer and my second is socializer. And I'm a pretty, even mix of that. I'm a little bit shy when I don't know people.
Mhm.
So I'm not gregarious with strangers like many of my friends. So that's what I'd say. But I definitely, as I said right at the beginning of this delightful ride, I built Second Life because I wanted to explore what people would create. Like the idea in my mind was that if Second Life was built correctly, it could be even bigger in a lot of ways than the real world, and that therefore an explorer wandering around Second Life would find it in some ways at least more interesting than, even if you had a airplane or helicopter or something and you could just tootle around the real world for the rest of your life. I was interested in the question of could I build something or could I invent something, that had more complexity so that as an explorer, you would be even more amazed, right? And I think that's
Yeah.
still, I mean, that's why I made Second Life. And I think personally I made it, and again, I probably share these attributes with many of us in here. I think I also made it a little bit to get away from the real world when I wanted to.
Yeah.
And again, I think that took years for me to really ponder, the truth of.
Yeah, no, I think that's true because there is some truth in being able to escape for a little bit, especially if things are difficult in real life.
Yeah.
I've found it to be a really good testing ground though for things in real life, especially when it comes to business. You can kind of try something and see what happens and your market is a little bit smaller. It's a little bit
Yeah.
more intense and different, right? Because Second Life residents are definitely an interesting group of people, not in a bad way, just
What do they all have in common, right? What's so beautiful about Second Life is in many ways is that we all have so little in common, which I find just heartwarming. I mean, I think that's great. But what do you think? What do you think people in Second Life all have in common? I ask people this a lot.
I think that well, I don't know. I think it's changed over the years. I think 10 years ago, people came here for social connection. The social connection is what always keeps people here. Um,
Right.
as angry as everybody gets about everything that happens, nobody ever leaves because they have friends here. And once their
Yeah.
connections leave, like sometimes they pass away or, whatever, once their connections leave, then they leave. I don't know necessarily what gets them in, but definitely it's the connections that help keep the roots of people that are here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. We used to survey people, and I remember surveying like software developers, who you'd think would be the ones who were the least, socially attached. Of course, that's not a fair statement, but it was just, kind of a stereotype or something. And I remember exactly what you said. I don't know whether it was reading one anecdotal answer or something, but it was exactly that. It was somebody who, like me, was a software engineer and was like, well, I got into Second Life because I wanted to build stuff or, try out the programming language. And then yep, sure enough, you say, "Yeah, but why are you still here 3 years later?" And I remember that again, I think it was a single anecdote. This person said, "Well, I went to the sandbox and I met this guy and he showed me a thing. And then I went home and I logged in the next day and then I worked on this gadget, I wrote some more scripting code. And then I came back to find the guy so I could show him what I made, right?" It's like that's the classic. That's how you made a friend. And then, that friend, as you say, keeps you in the world. And that's as it should be.
Yep. I
Right.
have I have a really similar story as well. I just happened to make friends with a guy that was a really brilliant like marketing executive for a bank or something in
Mhm.
Chicago. And I was like I was a young budding little And he was such a great mentor to have this mentor that could really help, and you could ask tons of questions and try things and show stuff, but it wasn't quote real life, but it was,
Yeah.
real life
Yeah.
skills, but still applicable, but not. It's really interesting that way.
Yeah. This is just beautiful, by the way. I hope everybody will get to you. This is gonna be a video as well, right?
Oh,
So
absolutely.
perfect of us. This is just so amazing. I can't tell you. These wandering paths through the mainland just are so intoxicating to me. I didn't know that all of these community structures had been built. It's just incredible.
Yeah. Some of them are really old, but some of them are really new. And of course, like right along the roads is where most of the people settle. That's where the infrastructure is because of the roads. There's a lot of like driving groups and stuff too.
I wrote something in a blog that I published a couple days ago. I said the relentless action of living things is to build structures larger and longer lasting than themselves. And this is a kind of a deep philosophical thing, but it's true. And it's why you get things like this. And it's why we work together and collaborate as humans, is because we're dying to build big things. And so we need each other's help much of the time, right? To build big things. And I'm just delighted by this wandering path through the world, because this is the perfect example of that, right? Like people reach out to their neighbors and say, all right, what are we going to do here? And it all comes together. Or, I'm sure plus or minus bugs in the software and, changes we need to make to the rules, but it comes together.
I think when I did this with Strawberry a couple of years ago, I
Mhm.
think it was her that reminded me that like we are literally on programming that's like I think it was like 18 years old at the time.
Yep.
And, this has been doing this for a person that could now legally vote in the United States. Like that is
Mhm.
how long it has been here, which is just that is crazy.
And of course, we never thought about how to make it just like any, crazy new product designers, right? We were a young group of people that were just doing the best we could, but we didn't really imagine it succeeding for 20 years like this. And so we didn't think about things like backwards compatibility. Like, is there any way to make new features, but have everything, kind of be backwards compatible, right? And we just didn't, for the most part, we just didn't put a lot of time into thinking about that. We just, as aggressively as we could, added the features that either we wanted or that everybody else wanted
Mhm.
to just get things working. And of course, that left us with this curious and, of course, frustrating situation that it's very difficult to make changes to the system. I'm reminded of that wonderful Blade Runner, whatever it is, the line where Tyrell says, you can't make a change to an organism once it's you know, once it's split its cells, 3 or 4 times, any change will kill it.
The facts of life. To make an alteration in the evolvement of an organic life system is fatal. A coding sequence cannot be revised once it's been established.
Why not?
Because by the second day of incubation, any cells that have undergone reversion mutations give rise to revertant colonies like rats leaving a sinking ship. Then the ship sinks.
And I think of Second Life a little bit in that frustrated way sometimes, that it's so beautiful, but it's this living organism that we have to be very careful, because a lot of the changes that we would think would work would kill it.
I think the mainland itself is a really good example of that. Some people look at some of these old builds and structures and they're like, "Oh, it's terrible. Get rid of this thing." I hate it.
Yeah.
And some people look at it and they don't see it like that. They see
Yeah.
a monument to a friend that died 5 years ago, and if you touch it, it is not okay. So,
Right.
yeah, it's
Right.
kind of
And
crazy to see
everybody
that.
e and everybody who gets here for the first time, of course, must have some part of them that wants to just tear it all down and start again, because, of course, they just got here. So they're like, "I wanna take this place over and make it my own, and I wanna change all the rendering, and I wanna change the graphics, and I wanna change the sky." And, it's
Mhm.
like, "Okay, well, yeah, but there are people, as you say, that have been here for 20 years," which
Yeah.
is just absolutely nuts.
Yeah, there are people that really have had their land for, like, 20 years. One of the things that
Totally.
when I go to the Bay City Alliance meetings on Sunday, they have been meeting there, Philip, for like over a decade. Every Sunday, this group of people that have land in Bay City, I mean, that is crazy. That's a real community of people that meet all the time and do stuff together. That is
Just
insane.
crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Look at the Japanese building up there, or the Japanese style building up there in the distance. So beautiful. I remember a guy from Japan one time showing me his house, and he was talking to me with a translator bot. It was when we first plugged in the Google Translate or whatever. And I was just so floored, so moved by the fact that this guy who did not speak English and is typing kanji and is telling me all about his house. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is so fantastic. I would not be able to speak to this person in real life, were I to visit his home. And here I can. It's just so great.
So, okay, so what kind of people do you think, when you asked me earlier, what do you think we all have in common? What is it who is Second Life for? Like, what's our target audience? Who are we going after? Everybody?
Well, clearly not everybody, right? I mean, as you know, I've said that many, many times lately. And indeed, I think that if you ask the difference between the me that was the CEO and the me today, the older, wiser me, um, I would I would say that one big difference is that I don't think it's for everybody now. And when I was a kid, or I guess when I was in my 30s and we launched Second Life, I really wanted it to be for everybody. And I thought it could be. And I wasn't lying. I mean, when I said that everybody was going to be in Second Life and what were we going to do with the buildings in New York? Were we going to play racquetball in them or whatever? I meant it. I mean, it did seem very possible that things would get so good that we'd all do, everybody on earth would spend some fraction of their days in a place like this, or hopefully actually in Second Life. And I think now that that isn't true. And to your question, I mean, does it tell us more about people who are here? I mean, I think one thing about Second Life is there is an irreducible difficulty to living in a digital world like this. There are challenges to it, whether it's building your avatar or finding friends or negotiating, with others, with a community, what you want to be doing, like this beautiful community we're driving through here. All of those things have an irreducible level of difficulty to them. And of course, maybe it's just because we're bad software designers and we could just make the UI a little better, but I don't think so. It's been 20 years now, and if we were so incompetent, then Facebook or somebody else would have put us out of business by now, right?
Right.
When that hasn't turned out to be the case. So I think it's probably more likely that it's very difficult to go here, And so what I think that means is that the people who go here have, and I've come to believe it's a huge variety of different reasons, but they have some reason that enables them to be willing to put in the time to make this work. So that's what I think we all have in common, is that we have some reason, like that, like there never ended up being a casual way to use Second Life, is a different way to put it, right? Donut up on the hill there. Jeez, I just love this place. Look at that.
This is my favorite. One of my favorite.
You see that up there? There's a donut. It's just a donut through the trees. I'm watching a donut. It's just so good. It just pleases me. What do they call that? They call that Googie architecture or something in Los Angeles in the 1960s is where it all began, right? Where we did that donut, the one that's in the Marvel movies, the donut house. Look at that delicious donuts. I'm looking at it right now.
You never know what you're going to find on the mainland.
It's just so good. I can't believe it. This is yet another place that I've never been on this road. I'm so overjoyed that I'm going to take my teammates. I'm going to try to do like a walking, people do those, like a walking one-on-one, meeting at work, since COVID. I'm going to totally do that in one of these.
Yeah.
I'm going to get the next time I have a one-on-one with somebody at work here, I'm going to just be like, let's get a little pod and ride around.
Yeah, you should. Well, this is what I did during COVID. I was in New York, and so we weren't really allowed to leave our houses. And I went,
Right.
quote, drives on the pods. That's what I did the whole time. So
Wow.
let's go back to onboarding. So
Sure.
I was reading the article that where Hamlet talked a little bit about there's going to be some UI changes, which at first, I'll be honest, when I read it, I was like, what are they doing? And then I started thinking about it and I was like, well, this is actually kind of brilliant, right? Because, like, let's say you want, say, somebody wants to do a concert and they want to go to the concert to listen to this person sing or do something in Second Life, and they've never gone to Second Life before. They onboard right there at the concert, which is kind of brilliant with Dick,
Exactly.
right? Yeah, that very smart. So tell me, what
Yeah.
y'all are doing?
Well, as we talked about it before, the first thing that we decided to do after I came back was to refocus our energy. I'm saying refocus because we had already done a bit of prototyping in this regard, but we wanted to take on this problem of whether for at least some of us, we could allow Second Life to run entirely in a browser, right? And that meant that, well, as you know, there's multiple ways to do that, but with something with the complexity of Second Life and the large numbers of people in the same place and stuff, it seemed that the only feasible way to do that would be to render Second Life in the cloud and then stream it down to your browser, right? And we knew from both just prior work in the industry and also my own work at my company, High Fidelity, we knew that that would work because we had built, prototypical streaming head end kind of systems to do that. And so the first thing we did was we decided, okay, let's make it work in the browser, or at least let's make the world, the view of the world we're seeing right now. In other words, forget about the UI. Just, if you turn the UI off, right, you're looking at the world. So the way we started thinking about it was, let's get the view of the world streaming from the cloud, because that'll take away the requirement for a download and the requirement for a GPU. And that's got to be something that is going to be appealing to some more people than the ones using Second Life today, right? And then the second thing we realized was, hey, wait a second. If we do it that way, what we could do is we could just turn the UI completely off and then start rebuilding a new UI on top of it, right? And again, I should hesitate to say something. Unlike our many unsuccessful escapades in the past into UI changes, there's something that I recognize now, and let me say it because it's important for people to think about that are listening to this. Anyone who's already gotten comfortable with a very complex UI has neither a need nor any interest in changing it.
For sure.
And this is like super important. Like if you're a Photoshop user, forget about Second Life, right? Just Photoshop or Blender, right? Those are extremely complex interfaces. And what happens is you memorize them, right?
Yep.
So it really doesn't matter like where the lasso tool is in Blender. It's important that it just stay wherever it was because you memorize where it is. And so that's how you do your work. And so I think one of the mistakes we made in the past that we're not going to make now is to change the UI for everyone, new people and old people. But that just doesn't work because you're just ruining the experience for the old people and maybe making it better for the new people. It remains to be seen, right?
Right.
So that I think is really an important principle. So what we're thinking about now is, hey, if we create a streaming version of the viewer that you don't have to download, let's build a web UI on top of it that uses completely modern UI techniques, because that would allow us to make, daily changes to the UI to make tests, So what you'll see when you use Project Zero, so if you are coming in and signing up in Second Life, today or something, you may get put in the browser-based kind of, cohort. And if you do, what you'll see is that and this goes back to something you said earlier. What you see when you get started is, yeah, instead of being sent to a welcome area, you get this what we're calling the go menu, which right now just has kind of 12 random places that we picked. I mean, it wasn't totally random. We tried to pick places that were popular or interesting, but basically the idea we have is throw up a UI that just has a bunch of, hey, where do you want to get started? And picks a bunch of things that might suit you, So like there's a choice for developers that would be like a sandbox, right? Where you can start building. And then, like you said earlier, rather than sending you to a welcome orientation experience that you have to do for like the first hour or so, we just put you directly at that location. And then our goal is to use modern, web tools and everything to build whatever tutorials are necessary. So if we have to show you what buttons you hit to walk, or, bring up your avatar customization, we're going to do that in a completely new UI that is clean and modern looking, but also more importantly, is just something that we can easily modify all the time. We have our own UI layer in the product, which of course for third-party developers out there know what it's called. It's called Zooey. And it's terribly old. And it was built by us, and it was the best we could do. But I mean, that was the best like 4 engineers could do in their spare time, basically here. So we recognize that the very tools we use to build the UI, and again, I know like the folks at Firestorm would vigorously nod their heads as I said this, those tools are not very good. And so we need to get to modern tooling to build the UX, and then only for the new people, rapidly iterate on that UX to make it more accessible. And as anyone here, of course, in Second Life has a long list and will tell you and will tell me, there's a bunch of things that we can fix to at least make it a little bit better. And the other point is, I'd like to see Second Life grow just a little, actually.
Mhm.
I'm not actually that worried about it. It doesn't need to double or anything, or double in the next year or something. It doesn't need to do that, but it should be growing.
Yeah.
It should be growing just some,
Yep.
And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to figure out how to make it grow again a little bit, but not a lot. It doesn't have to. It's already very successful. It's very financially successful and stuff. So, and it's home for a lot of people. So we're not going to screw that up. We're just going to cautiously make changes that cause it to grow a little bit.
Well,
I hope.
okay. So if the plan is to grow, like all of us grumpy old bees here, is there anything that we could do to, other than be, maybe more welcoming? Ha. Is there anything that we could do to help? Like maybe, I mean, if the idea is eventually people would be able to just kind of onboard wherever, is there anything that we could do to help welcome the
Well,
water?
I mean, first of all, I want to make sure that we get out of the way as much as possible so that people can help, right? Like when you think about that idea of like, here's my vision of it. Like if you build a cool place in Second Life like this, you should just be able to indicate that you want new people to start there and then onboard them yourself, like
Yep.
that's one of the visions that I have right now for how we're going to do this. And that, just like you were saying, it's why we're doing this go menu approach, where if anybody says to me, hey, Philip, I want to try bringing people to the following location as their starting point, we're going to be like, okay, here's how we do that. We're going to stick it into the database, or we're going to give you a URL like we do with the existing referral program that you can go in. This is so cool, by the way. We're looking in the inside of the Great Wall here.
I know. Who made
So
this?
cool. I just love it. And we can dive through the rock. It's just straight out of a lucid dream or something. So, look at this. We're going to be winched right through the rocks. So my ask is, would you help us onboard people, right? That's my ask to everybody is, will you help onboard people? And of course, not everybody is going to want to do this, but some of them are. And then for the ones that want to do it, what do we need to change in the feature set to help you do that? Like, for example, I think we need to have voice on everywhere, like more, like it should be easier to use voice because many new people are going to want to use voice or expect it. But, we need better voice moderation so that if you're the landowner, you can control the people that are there, right? Better.
Right,
And
right.
like, so that is an example of a feature that we're going to add, hopefully quite soon, to WebRTC, which is the new voice standard that we're going to turn on, and to enable the people who own the land where people are talking to have the right controls over those people, So that's an example of something that I'm pretty sure we're going to need to do to help you bring people on. But the basic idea is just to figure out a way to invite everybody to help us onboard people and respect the fact that people are going to come in with probably, dozens, if not hundreds of different optimum starting points, right?
Right.
And putting people on the island. I mean, by the way, for those who don't remember, if you've seen the Firestorm Welcome Island, which is just great, by the way.
It is.
It's my favorite, but of course I'm biased because that island is patterned on the oldest island that we ever built. The original Welcome Island with the parrot and the pathways of rocks through a little wooded island was I built it. We all built it together in 2004 or whatever that was, or three. And it's so funny that like it's never been improved on, but I think that almost makes the point, which is that any orientation experience that kind of requires you to walk around and exercise the controls is probably just not the right direction. It'd be better to just get you directly to an experience that can help explain Second Life to you. Because like I think one of the problems, right? What does everybody say? What is there to do here, right? That's the classic, right? Because a
What
lot
is
of people
Second Life?
coming
What
in,
is this
yeah,
place? Like, what is
yeah.
it? Yeah.
Yeah, what is it? What's there to do here? And I think we're doing a terrible job, like sticking you in a little forest and saying, well, learn how to use the controls for the next hour and a half, and then we'll tell you what there is to do. And it's like, okay, that's a big ask for somebody
Yeah.
that just came from playing The Sims or something. I mean, they're like, this is too strange. I don't know I don't know what this means.
Yeah.
So
Well, what do you say? Like when they go, what is there to do here? What is Second Life?
this
Yeah.
is not a you know a big more pig, or it's not a single one.
Yeah.
It's not a. And if you're looking for that, you're going to be frustrated. We need to tell you up front, like, no, 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 no. There are role playing experiences here. You said your initial experience was that, and of course, those experiences are amazing.
Mhm.
But that's not. I'm sure even you would agree as a role player, right? Like, if we set up Second Life for the new person as basically a murder mystery game,
Yeah.
I don't think that would work any better. I think people would
No.
be like, "Oh, okay, I'm uncomfortable. I'm leaving." I
Boy,
always want to do role playing. I want to use Second Life to learn how to role play better because I've always personally loved the idea of role playing, but like so many of us, right? I find it pretty intimidating, right? To take on a role and act it out, and I love the idea of it, but that's an example of something that's not for everybody.
oh, I love role playing. It's a good way to like work your writing skills too, And some people will write a novella in like 10 minutes. They'll bust out like 4 posts.
Look at this tall building next to us. Stellar Sunshine built this beanstalk in Linden World, which is before Second Life, the alpha of Second Life. And it used to cast these long shadows like a sundial along the world. And it was one of the things that I was delighted by. Our very earliest shadow engine considered everything. So the mountains far away would cast shadows, and of course, like so many other fancy features at the beginning of Second Life, we had to take it out before we launched because it was too computationally intensive. But I'm delighted by this gigantic Washington monument that we're next to here.
So you are a sound guy. You talked about voice and stuff like that. So do you obviously you think voice plays a factor in connection here?
I think that and people are very good at this. So of course we can do this with text very effectively, which of course Second Life is great proof of. But people use every communication medium available to them to communicate with each other, you know,
Yeah.
whether it's the clothes I'm wearing or, where I look around, or, how I hold my body, all of those are ways that we communicate with each other. And of course, some of them are conscious and some of them are unconscious. Voice is a very powerful medium, and 3D voice or spatial audio is necessary when multiple people talk at the same time because, and this is a really interesting thing, the reason that you can't have a old school phone call with a bunch of people on it very effectively is because, as we all know, if two of the people on the call while you're holding the phone up to your ear talk at the same time, it's very hard for you to make out both of their voices. Whereas if you're sitting at a dinner table with your friends, two people can totally talk at the same time and you can understand both of them. And most people have probably never thought about why that is.
Yeah.
But it turns out that the reason why it is that the sense of where the direction that a sound is coming from, like another person's voice, this is so cool. Look at this, is used to the direction of the sound is used by your brain to kind of parallel process it. So if there's a sound coming from your left, that's a speaking voice, and a sound coming from your right, your brain does this super cool thing where it uses the location of the sounds to separate them in its processing so that it can process them both at the same time. And that's just a fantastically interesting thing. So, to be able to have group conversations, which of course are very much the norm in Second Life, you have to be able to position everybody's voices at a different apparent location and space for your ears.
Yeah.
And that's called spatial audio. And
Yeah.
that's what we worked on a lot at High Fidelity.
That's like if I were to toggle on that I want to be able to hear voices dependent on where my avatar is versus where my camera is kind of thing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
So I'm always experimenting. I'm going to have some meetups. Maybe I'll call the folks in my Friends of Philip group, and we'll try to do a meetup in the next couple of weeks that uses a high fidelity tool that we haven't released yet, that we built. It's just a fun way to like sit at tables with a bunch of people, and I'm gonna try it out on everybody. But it's a fun way to experience spatial audio because it uses our full power high fidelity spatial audio, which if you didn't ever get a chance to use high fidelity as the virtual world, you can get it, you can try it out. But it's really wonderful. It feels good. It's very warm. You can laugh and
Yeah.
sit in a group with people at the same time. Oh my God, that's an old telehub coming up, isn't it? Holy moly. Wow. I remember working on that. Wow.
There are so many of these pod rides. You really should. I'll send you like a little box with all of the landmarks and stuff, but
Yeah.
you'll love them. They're really fun. If you could wave a magic wand and change anything about Second Life, what would it be?
Well, there's so many different magic wands you could do there. Well, there's a lot of directions I could go with that. One of the things Second Life's done really well is groups. But I think we could do it even better. Like the idea that people naturally form groups and that they use groups to negotiate things between each other and stuff
Mhm.
is a very powerful idea. Like, look, we just increased the group limits a little bit. And of course we'll continue to increase them as much as we can, as quickly as we can. The the It's really interesting to wonder about that, right? Like, why does that matter so much? I would have never thought this back in 2003, that people need and use groups to create so many structures, right? And I'm just fascinated by that. So I think one, if I could not so much, yeah, if I could wave a magic wand, I would go back and rebuild all the group stuff to work really well. Like I'd put democratic management like as a built-in feature into groups, so that what I mean by that is, so that rather than having an admin like you do on Discord, the default group, you vote everybody in. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
instead of having an admin, you just say, I want to make a group called Friends of Philip, and then you can only get into the group if the other people that are already in the group let you in. And similarly, if you're a terrible jerk, the people in the group can throw you out democratically, with a vote. And like that's an example of a feature that I would have built in from day one if I had known what I know now, because it was so important to Second Life, and I didn't think about that. So that's one example.
You know what? I've never thought about it, but yeah, actually, groups are pretty important. Like with the group tier and group notices and access that you have with groups. And yeah, they are really important.
I mean, I think another one would just be to make the avatars out of the stuff of the world. I mean, this is kind of where we're going because things are meshed now and stuff, but it's both a pro and a con, because avatars are so beautiful in Second Life that they're the reason why a lot of people are here, because they can create an avatar that is exactly who they want to be and is just photorealistic if they want it to be, and like completely, real. But we had to break a lot of rules, as we all know here. And in fact, it's not just we, the company, it's also the amazing content creators that build avatars, right?
Right.
They basically just pulled out all the stops to build a very specific avatar, engine, if you will, that is not really kind of attached to the rest of the world. And I think if I went back to do it all again, and I look forward to, maybe I'll get a chance to do this. If I was rebuilding Second Life today, I would use different primitives and I would make the avatars built out of the same primitives. And the primitives, for those who geek out on this stuff, I'm sure there's a bunch of people listening thinking, I know the answer to what he's about to say, is splats, which is this concept of these little splats are these kind of cotton balls, if you will, where, imagine building an avatar out of cotton balls, but the cotton balls have the property that as you turn them and look at them from different directions, they can actually look different. So they can look reflective on one side and not reflective on the other side. That's this thing called a splat. And if I was building Second Life all over again today, um, right now it would unquestionably be built entirely with splats. So a Second Life that instead of being like right now, we're probably looking at what uh 50,000, depending on our draw distance, right? We're looking at like 50,000 primitives, right? Some of which are mesh, some of which are solids. What you'd be looking at in a modern version of Second Life, if I started again today, you'd be looking at hundreds of millions of splats. So it would look just like this, but when you went up close to something and you went really zoomed in, you'd see that the structure is built out of these tiny, tiny little fuzzy balls, basically called splats.
Hmm.
So that's something you're hearing the engineer and me geeking out on this. But if I started again today, I would do it with that. And I think that would open up a whole bunch of really remarkable possibilities, not just for the way things look, but for the way the physics works and everything too. But we can't do that because we built it in the way that we did.
That's right. That's
It's
right.
gonna, to a certain extent, it's gonna stay that way forever because there's so much wonderful treasures here people have built.
Yeah, it's true. Well, so what is the thing out of everything that you've done with Second Life? What is the thing that you're most proud of that you've built either maybe in Second Life or with Second Life or accomplished with it?
It's funny because, when I started, what I wanted was to see all this crazy stuff, like I said earlier. Like what I was interested in was unimaginably weird and wonderful things being built by people. And I got that. That happened. In fact, it happened in the first few years, I mean, Second Life continues to get more and more amazing, but still, if you've been here for a long time and you have, it was pretty awesome, like right from the start. But what I would say now, and this is a different me than the 30 something me, is what I really think is the greatest treasure is all the relationships that we made.
Yep.
Like, think how many people know each other now in here. We're having a lot of troubles with tech in this world right now, right? Tech's done a lot of harm and we're all looking at it and it may do us in, right? I mean, it's bad, we're in a bad moment right now for the world. But this is one of those wonderful examples of something that was good for people, or at least on margin, statistically was really good for people. And I think the singular example of that is just all the relationships that we created. I
Yeah.
mean, how many millions, and it's got to be millions of unique new relationships has Second Life created? I feel pretty proud of that. I mean, that is awesome.
Yeah.
And I don't know who else could say that. I mean, that's pretty cool.
I agree. I think what was it? I think I heard a stat from Brad one time that said something like 7 million people have downloaded the Second Life viewer or something like that.
I think that's actually, believe it or not, that's closer to, I think that number, don't quote me, but well, you will. I think it's more like 75 million is the number of people.
Oh, wait.
Yeah. Over all time that have tried it. But I think it's something like that. It's like 75 million is like the number of people that have actually downloaded it and tried it. But, I mean, the more interesting number is just, and now, of course, the geek in me is trying to think how I can measure this and give everybody a statistic. But I'm just thinking, like, how many people meaningfully got to know each other, right? I don't know how you measure that exactly, but like here would be something, I guess it would be something like how many people had, more than three or four, had like a bunch of chat back and forth with each other, or talk to each other one day and then also the next day or later.
Yep.
And I think that number is just going to be some bonkers thing, right? Because it would be, I guess it would be proportional it would be as much as proportional to the square of the number of people that have used Second Life, right? So if you said that was like a million over time, and I think that's probably about right. If you look at the last 20 years, it's probably like a million-ish, people that have really been here a lot, that been here a lot. Then you would say that at the limit, the number of relationships that are created is something that looks like that number squared. It's not quite that big, but it's like a billion or like hundreds of millions. And that's just super amazing. It's just super amazing. Like if those people made contact with 1,000 other people, I guess, and it was a million, it would be a billion sort of contacts that had been made with new friends or new acquaintances or whatever. And that's just a stunning number, that's what we should be trying to do with tech right now.
Yeah, it's definitely the kind of legacy that you want to have. Sure.
It's so unfortunate that things like Facebook ended up going the other way. It's so weird
Yeah.
because we started at the same time as Facebook. I met Mark when because we were bigger than them at the beginning because we launched a little bit before Facebook, and so there was a weird moment there where I was the famous guy and Mark Zuckerberg was the new kid in town. And I say kid because he's a good bit younger. He is a good bit younger than I, but it's so weird that Facebook didn't end up being a good thing for people, or it's questionable. And Second Life did. But of course, Facebook was a lot more accessible and general purpose, so it was something that, worked, at least it was appealing in some sense to everybody. But yeah, I think that it's so sad that tech has gone in the direction of damaging relationships when it just always felt to me, at least in the 90s, like the obvious direction for tech was to build stronger relationships. Like my dream of tech in the 90s was that I'd have friends in Japan that were just as good of friends as the friends I had in California. It's so unfortunate that we've not gotten there yet. But I look at Second Life and I'm like, but, look, it could go that way, Like there's no, tech is not inherently evil. Here we are, it's just neutral, it's its own thing.
It is. Thank you so much, Philip. This was really awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you. I really seriously thank you so much for taking me around. This is yet again, this is just an amazing place. I'm gonna save that starting point. Is that pod resing point like a
Yeah.
popular one that you had me go to?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
There's probably like 20 more stations. So I'll send you a box and you can
Please.
go onto the old teen grid. It's so cool. It's one of my favorites too. So I'll send you the
Oh, no
link
way.
so you can go check it out.
That's fantastic.
It has the
The
best
land.
infrastructure. So you'll see.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Fiore.
Okay.
It's
Thank you for
wonderful to hang out. Yep.
Okay.
Take care.